All right, guys, you can fire away. I don't have any opening statements. You guys can start asking if you like.
What's just being in this role, the experience, like kind of what are the big takeaways? What have you learned? Like what kind of what's the lesson in it? I guess for you as a coach, like how have you grown from it?
When you're a head coach, when you're in the seat, you really you hear all the stories from other head coaches about the things you have to deal with in the building, and there's kind of that funnel from the building that comes to your desk. You probably don't have as good of appreciation of that until you're in that seat. When you're a coordinator or a position coach, you're kind of dealing with your specific area. I have certainly a newfound respect for that position because you're obviously dealing with the whole building. You're dealing with not only the players, you're dealing with the coaching staff, you're dealing with all the departments that touch the players and touch the building. And so I think I do definitely have an appreciation for that. I have been a head coach at the college level, at the lower college level, and so I did have a little bit of understanding, but certainly at this level, it's certainly amplified a little bit. So I've also learned that I've always felt like relationships with the players is the most important thing in coaching, and I think that this solidified that for me. No matter where I've been, or no matter the 32 years of coaching, I've always felt like, and this has come up at some point, that the players aren't going to buy in unless they know you care about them. They don't care about what you know, any of that stuff, until they know that there's a care for them as people, and the people side, the human side, is really important. And I think that the way that in the last 6 years that I've developed relationships with the players really helped me in this instance because their support, the buy-in, they knew I was coming from a good place, and so that really I always felt like it was important, but I think this kind of proved it.
Riz, how do you feel the players responded to you? They all have been pretty much to a man pretty complimentary.
Supportive is probably the best thing I can say. From day one, the texts started coming in, and the guys coming up to my office, and whether it was whatever we need to do to help you out, just extremely supportive. And as you guys know, right away we made some changes, and you never know what's going to get kind of frowned upon or side-eyed or whatever you want to call it. And there wasn't never ever any of that. I think everyone knew that I was coming from a good place. I think you guys all know by now I'm pretty genuine. And so I think the guys realized that and was like, hey, what can we do to help? Whether it was the guys that have been here the longest, Cam, DeMario, I've mentioned those guys before, but Derek, Alve, all the guys, the captains, all the leaders of that locker room were the guys that step up the most. And so, that's what I was kind of getting at yesterday post-game, is that just the support's been, from the locker room, has been unreal. And, listen, we had a little bit of early success there when I first took over. We won 3 out of the first 4 games. The one we lost was, we were thrown to the end zone to either tie or win the game. And then, unfortunately, we got a little bit of a, of a bad streak here and didn't finish up strong. But certainly, gosh, I can't thank the players and the locker room enough for how they handled it.
I know you don't want to make this all about you, but what do you hope that the Saints and possibly other teams consider when they evaluate you as a full-time candidate?
Yeah, listen, I would say this. I would say look at the whole body of work, that we've had here, over these last 9 weeks and 8 games. I think that I could sit here very confidently and say that that it's pretty clear that I'm a good leader, whether you like me as a coach or not. That's your opinion. You're entitled to that. But one of the things I think I'm very, very strong in is leadership and communication and relationships. And I think there's not a more important trio than those 3 when you coach, because coaching is about teaching. And when you can lead, when you can communicate, and when you have good relationships with the people that you have to teach, it certainly makes that process a lot better. And so I think that, when you, like I said, the body of work, look at all the things there's a lot of things we did accomplish. And some of them might have been little things, behind the scenes type of things, when I took over, we had a major health problem with our team. We just did. It's just a fact. We never made an excuse about it, but we had to address it. And so we changed a lot of things. The dynamic warm-up sounded like a silly thing at the time, right? But the dynamic warm-ups that we put in, the activation period, the hydration that we emphasized. We didn't have I think we had one soft tissue injury between practice and games in the last 8 weeks. We never had one player cramp in a game. We didn't have one player cramp in a game in the last 8 games. And so there was a lot of, good things, I think. We had our starting quarterback for those first 4 games out of the gate, and when I took over, we won 3 of them. And like I said, unfortunately, we didn't win a game this year without Derek Carr as our starting quarterback. Again, people can form their own opinions about Derek Carr, and again, they're entitled to those. We didn't win a game when he didn't start, so unfortunately, we had to play some of the younger guys, and it is what it is. So I think overall, when this whole thing gets evaluated, just look at the whole thing, look at the body of work, and look at a lot of things we accomplished.
Just for the record,
Yeah.
have you spoken to Mickey or Mrs. Benson today about the future?
I spoke to Mickey quickly this morning. We met this morning, and I'm going to, again, the organization has to go through the NFL interview process. Obviously, have to have, a number of candidates that they're going to interview. I'm going to interview as well. That date hasn't been set in stone just yet, but probably sometime next week. I'll get a chance to kind of take a step back here for a couple of days and reflect on everything, and then kind of reassess and some of the things that we would change moving forward, and pros and cons of what went on here the last 9 weeks. And so, yeah, I didn't get a chance to speak with Mrs. B just yet, but I've been in great communication. Mrs. B's been phenomenal. We've communicated very often here over the last couple of months, and I'm sure I'll meet with her either today or tomorrow.
So to be clear, you expect to be one of the candidates for the full-time job?
That's correct.
Are you free to interview for other head coaching jobs, or teams would have to request permission from the Saints the same as with an assistant coach within it?
That's correct. Yeah. So the rules apply. So if a team puts it, because I'm not, that's correct. Because I'm the interim head coach, if a team wanted to put in permission to speak for a head coaching position.
Has anyone made that request yet that you know of?
I'm gonna keep that here for now. I'm sure you'll hear about it.
Riz, just kind of in that same vein as far as you're going to do the self-scout or whatever the next couple of days, but you did a really good job of changing the culture kind of immediately, like a jolt. Is there more that you feel like you could do if you were starting out today, being able to run a program for the full year, full time? Is there a lot more work that can be done there? Is there?
There is. Let's be honest. It wasn't a blank canvas when I took over. And there was a lot of painting already on the page. And so I think when you start from scratch with anything, and you can take a step back, and you have time to prepare, and you have time to do things, in this profession, whether that's roster, it's staff, it's all those things. It's putting all those things in place. I did what I thought was best at the time with the circumstances that we had, whether that was our coaching staff, or whether that was the locker room, or whether it was the roster. There's only so many things you can do in the middle of it, though, right? So once you get in the middle of a journey, and you're halfway through, it's a little bit hard to change. Now, when you start over and you can kind of press the reset button, I think there's a lot of things you can do. We practice the way we practice because of the way the circumstances were injury-wise. We did a lot of the things because of where we were. You take a step back in any off season, and you get to reassess the whole thing. And so I'll have a plan going in when I meet with with Mickey and the team that they're going to put together to do the interview process, and Mrs. Benson, and I'll have a plan moving forward for what that'll look like.
What will your role be from here? Are you going to be just an outside kind of head coach candidate, or are you going to be a part of the evaluation process of this past season with the front office, with the owner?
Yeah, we're definitely going to, I guess, one step at a time. I guess the first thing is let's evaluate our season. What did we do well? What did we not do well? What do we need to do, going forward? We do evaluations of all the players. So the coaching staff, everybody's still employed. So our coaching staff will take a little bit of time here this week. We'll come back next week, and we'll do our evaluations of all the position groups. We'll evaluate the 3 phases. We'll do all that, for the, for Mickey, the front office, the ownership, business side, all that. We'll evaluate it. We'll do it for ourselves. We'll go back and evaluate everything that we, have done, and what we think we can get better at, what pieces we think we have to, move on from, add, delete, all those things. That's kind of the same thing we do every year, Jeff. So it's kind of so that'll be, I'll kind of head that up into 3 different phases as well as the individual players.
You interviewed when DA was hired. Did you learn anything from that process that might be helpful this time around?
Really, the biggest thing I've learned is the on-field coaching part of it. I had kind of a plan going in the last time I interviewed. What I didn't have was I didn't have experience in coaching 8 games on the sideline. That's what I didn't have the last time I interviewed. Now I do. The one thing I can say, this go around is, listen, I do have some on-field experience in this league on the sideline, taking the team, through these last 8 games. I've definitely learned on managing the game, and there's some things that, during the course of the game that we were able to do. There's different ways you can go about it. You look at the NFL right now, and really you look at, there's 3 different pools of head coaches. There's head coaches that are offensive play callers, there's coaches that are defensive play callers, and there's head coaches that are not play callers. And if you look at our league right now, if you look at the majority of teams that are actually in the playoffs, the majority of the teams in the playoffs have head coaches that are not play callers. It's becoming more of a trend. You look at Dan Campbell, you look at Mike Tomlin, you look at John Harbaugh, you look at Jim Harbaugh, you look at Dan Quinn. It just names are popping into my head. Sean McDermott. These guys are not play callers on their side of the ball. They're more the head coach, CEO types. And so that's kind of the model that we've used these last 8 weeks. And listen, there's a lot of things we can get better at. I think one of the things that went well these last few weeks was the game management portion of it. So I'm proud of that part.
Why do you think that is the case, that trend is happening right now to where the more like CEO type head coach is finding success?
There's a lot of things that are hard to do when you're an offensive or a defensive play caller. You spend a lot of time during the week in a lot of meetings for the game plan. And a lot of the other things that are going on in the building, it's hard to do everything. It's also a lot easier to manage the game when you're not a play caller. The play callers get emotional. And game management, you have to take emotion out of the game management. The analytics part, the timeout part of it, the replay part of it. There was a former head coach here that I worked for that was an offensive play caller. He's a little bit emotional, and I think I've said that before. And so he would, you become a little bit emotional when you're making the decisions, 4th down, go for it, things like that. I think when you look at the success of some of the teams, the head coach John Harbaugh is a guy that I got a lot of respect for and has had a lot of success in this league. He was obviously a special teams coordinator as well. And so, the model of the way they've done things, you get a really good offense coordinator, a really good defense coordinator. He's able to oversee everything. And it also allows you to be a bigger part of the day-to-day operations of your building. Offensive, defensive play callers are tied into meetings, player meetings, offensive install meetings, the game plan meetings at night, all those things. And so it pulls you from some of the other things that, are going on in the building.
When you finish a season like this, it's been a struggle. There's been issues. I think the common take would be, okay, start fresh, tear everything down. What would your kind of response to that be in terms of, staying the course or kind of going that route where everything gets kind of torn out?
Yeah, well, listen, I'd be up here lying to you if I told you changes need to take place. Change needs to take place. So that's going to happen. I mean, it's going to happen, in some way, shape, or form. How big or how little, it remains to be seen. But there needs to be change. There needs to be some change across the board. Locker room, roster, coaches, all that. We're all aware of that. We all get into this profession and we all understand that. And a lot of that has to do with the success and wins and losses. Totally get it. The old wipe the slate clean. There's a bunch of different ways you can go with that. Whole new everybody, front office, coaches, players. Sometimes that doesn't work either. If you look at the history of this league, the teams that make the least amount of changes over the course of time are actually the most successful. So I think there's some wholesale changes. I mentioned Mike Tomlin earlier. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and their organization, and they're what have they had? 3 head coaches in how many years? And so they kind of modify and mold their changes year to year. And so There's a lot of teams that make sweeping changes all the time in our league that every 3 or 4 years they kind of reshuffle it again and maybe haven't had as much success. My own opinion, I think there's a delicate balance. As I said, I think there's change that needs to be made, no doubt. And we went 5-12, so there needs to be change made. At the same time, I think there's a lot of strengths in this building. I think there's things that we do well. And so you have to, like I said, I think there's a delicate balance on the things that you do change.
Is it kind of a tough kind of message to balance, like you said, because obviously you are the head coach right now. You do see there's change needed to be made, but you're also going to be associated with the previous regime. Is that tough? Yeah,
listen. Naturally, I'm going to be associated with with the last regime. I got hired by Sean Payton, right? So I'm a quote unquote Sean Payton guy, and I listen. I see all that. Stuff, that kind of stuff is out there, and it is what it is. I've been coaching for 32 years. This is my 16th season. I just finished completed in the NFL. I think we all, at this point, take a step back and say, okay, what are the things we did well? What are the things we didn't do well? Whether it's the head coach or the coordinators or the position coaches or the players, there's going to be pieces that I think remain, and there's going to be pieces that get changed up. So I think you got to be careful sometimes in making wholesale changes. Though I do.
Darren, one of your mentors was, I know, Bill Parcells.
Yeah.
He had that famous quote, "You are what your record says you are." I mean, do you believe in that? Do you believe that's true?
I do. Now, I think there's reasons for that, but we're 5-12, and so naturally, the season didn't go the way any of us wanted it to go. Coaches, players. Did I think when I stood up here, I think we went to Irvine 24 weeks ago today. Did I think when we took off to go to Irvine 24 weeks ago that I was going to be standing up here giving the postseason press conference? No. And if you told me I was going to tell you the season probably didn't go very well for somebody. And so that's just the cold reality of the situation. So yeah, we're certainly we're not blind to it. I don't think anybody's putting the blinders on and thinking that there's not things that need to change. And so anytime you're in these situations, I think you have to be careful on how many things you change, because you can go the opposite direction. It can always get worse. It can always get worse as well. I think what we're tasked with, and everyone in the organization, the decision makers are tasked with, is what are the things we are doing well. Let's build upon those things and try to get better.
So you think that saying actually means you are what your record says you are right now, but not what you always will be? In other words,
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah. Do I think I'm associated with that record for the rest of my life? No. Find me the coach and player in this league. That's why it's a very humbling profession in the league we play in. It'll humble you quickly. I mean, you look at the San Francisco 49ers. Did anybody, just another great example. There's a team that played in the Super Bowl last year. They dealt with some circumstances this year. Is Kyle Shanahan how many games they won, 6-win coach? No, he's a great coach. And they have a great organization. They got a great GM. They got a great roster. They had some circumstances this year that led them, to a path that, they didn't want to go down either. So, this is a year-to-year thing.
and when it comes to not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I guess it's my cliche for what you had talked about before, but you said there are things that we do very well or we're good at. Could you give some examples?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we could sit here for a long time and talk about all 3 phases and the things that we did well in the 3 phases. There's certain things that there's certain things from a football specific standpoint that we did well this year. Listen, I'll speak from a special team standpoint. I think I looked this morning. I think we finished in the top 10 in 8 or 9 different categories in the special teams department. I think that's one of the things that flew under the radar this year. We ended up being number 1 in the league. With the new kickoff rule, we were number 1 in the league in kickoff drive start. You look at the year that Blake Grupe had. He went 27 to 31. You guys weren't even. I didn't get asked one question about Blake Grupe this year. And usually, when you don't get asked a question about the kicker, he did pretty good. Matt Hayball led the NFL in punts inside the 20-yard line. He had 41 of the 75 punts were inside the 20-yard line. I mean, that's outstanding. We were top 5 in the league in our punt return average with 4 different punt returners. So that's just some of the things off the top of my head that, there was a lot of things that we did well. I think our kickoff team and our punt return team, statistically, 2 of our 4 core teams, statistically, were number 1 in the league. It's hard to do, and that's a credit for half the season. Phil Galliano, Marwan Malouf took over, a big bulk of the special teams the second half of the year. We had a lot of players coming through because of the circumstances with injuries. That's a credit to the coaches and the players. It's great. So that's just a small sample of, so you go through everything, It's no different with personnel, same thing. Some things we did well, some players, some position specific. So certain guys at certain spots that, we have some strength at. There's certain areas where we're going to have to replace some guys and draft well and free agents and all that stuff. So, and when I say that, that's kind of what I mean by it.
Speaking of the special team side, I wanted to ask you about JT Gray. Didn't get nominated as a Pro Bowler, but what do you make of his season in terms of what you saw from him?
I think JT Gray should be on the first team All-Pro team. If he's not, he's getting robbed. He's going to get completely robbed if he doesn't. I think he got, left off the Pro Bowl team. The Pro Bowl voting is just, it's just non-traditional is probably the best way to say it, where you get a lot of hands in the soup. And so, did he get snubbed from the Pro Bowl? Yeah, he did. He deserves to be on the Pro Bowl team as the NFC Corp, special teamer. And he should be first team All-Pro. If he's not, I'm not sure what the voters are looking at. He might have had his best season, and that's saying something because he's had some really good. He's already been All-Pro, and so I don't know if the votes went in yet, but he's got my vote. I'm endorsing him for anybody that votes for All-Pro. JT Gray should be on your ballot.
There's a lot of veteran players on this team that have the opportunity to speak out throughout the course of the week, a lot of influential voices. And what do you make of, that group, that core group, kind of staying locked in, like guys who could have asked out, who have not done that?
Yeah, that might have been the best part of this whole, 8-game stretch is those, guys that I've mentioned before, those kind of that core group, the guys that have been here for a long time, staying engaged, I'll use Alve. I don't know. Someone made a comment to me the other day that in the whole time that Alvin's been here, in these last 8 weeks, I've seen him more engaged in maybe any 8-week span that he's been engaged, and that's including the last few weeks when he's been injured. His communication level, our relationship is great. He's just one example. I've just his leadership. He stepped up. That's why when I took over, I made him a captain because he really stepped up in that area. He was playing high-level football. His leadership had stepped up, and that's why we made that decision when we made it. And so that's just, listen, I agree. I think our quote-unquote marquee guys are the guys that were steering the ship.
In that same vein, what's it mean to you that you got players that had what ultimately ended up being season-ending injuries, like fighting though to get back to play in the last game of the season, and Alvin, everyone points to 1,000 yards, but you say he doesn't care about that. Like, you just want to be athletic. What's that mean to you that that's kind of the culture that you were able to build?
It means a lot to me, and I think there's probably a collection of people out there who thought that I was full of crap when I said that some of those guys were coming back. I'm sure they thought I was just throwing out there for the opponent to get ready for. I mean, Derek Carr was in there every day. I spoke to him every day in the training room, and I'm watching a guy that wanted to get back and I wanted to play. Did Alvin want to get back and get 1,000 yards and get back on the field for the team? Absolutely. He wanted to get back and he wanted to play. And so it meant a lot to me that those guys were, that didn't want to go on IR. Riz, I don't want to go on IR. I'm trying to get back. Because the easy thing to do, especially when you're eliminated from the playoffs, is, I'll see you next year. Especially with guys that are, are named players like that, and the guys that have already established careers. And so, it meant a lot to me personally to watch those guys in there every day trying to fight back and get out there. And it meant a lot to me to watch guys like, Cam Jordan and DeMario Davis and these guys in this last game of the year, still flying around the field, still playing with a passion. Because, it would have been easy to just kind of, cash it in, check it in, kind of check the box and be like, yeah, we're done. I never saw that.
Cam Jordan's been pretty vocal about that he wants to be back, and that if he's not, then it's a decision that was made elsewhere. But regardless of that, his desire to be back for another season and everything, just what do you think that says about the culture of this team?
Yeah, I think it says a lot, and I think if you look at Cam Jordan's the second half of the year, you would want him back based on what he's done these last 8 games. He's been one of our most productive defensive linemen in this second half of the season, and at his age and with his experience level, it tells you a lot about his person, a lot about the character. But his performance will tell you to bring him back too. So I mean, if you just strictly grading it upon his production, he deserves to be back. He did a hell of a job the second half of the year.
What have your conversations been like with Mickey Loomis and even if you've had conversations with Gail Benson, how would you characterize that, say for fans that are curious about how things are going?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with Mrs. B. Just extremely supportive from day one. We did a great. I think her and I both have formed a really good relationship here these last few weeks, or however when I took over. Really anything. And I mentioned the other day how generous and supportive she is. No different than in a situation with me. As far as my conversations with Mickey, listen, I think from the beginning, obviously. You guys know in the middle of the season, it's a tough change, tough on everybody. And, I think, like Mickey and I had a great conversation this morning about moving forward, and we had a great conversation about the game, a great conversation about where we are as an organization, great conversation about the head coach process that's going to be coming up. And so the communication level there has been very good. Mickey and I have always had a great relationship since the day I got here. So that really hasn't changed. I just probably talk to him a little bit more now than I have, when I was a special teams coach. But they've been extremely supportive with me. They're looking forward to sitting down and listening to the plan that we have, that I have for this organization, or if I remain the head coach moving forward. Very interested to hear, what I have to say and talk about evaluating the whole process and the whole building.
Have you had time to formulate a thought process as far as what plan you would have going forward?
Yeah, listen, very much similar to what I did last time. I mean, like I said, minus the experience. A lot of the things we incorporated were, when I took over, were part of the plan. I think the biggest, question here, Jeff, is really personnel from this point forward. Take a step back. I'm gonna go back and watch all of our cut-ups, so I don't make an emotional decision based on today, how I feel about the game yesterday. Take a step back, watch our 17-game cut-ups on the three sides of the ball, evaluate our staff on all three sides of the ball, and just go in with a very realistic approach, and go in with kind of a clear head. If I get interviewed today, my interview might be a little different than if it's a week from now when I get a chance to kind of go back and evaluate the whole entire body of work. But I think from this point moving forward, a big portion of my interview will be about that, about personnel, what we'll do coaching-wise, what we'll do player-wise.
Among the guys that were fighting to come back was Chris Alve. What did it mean for him to be back in practice, and what do you want to see from him this offseason?
Yeah, he's another guy that really wanted to come back, and I, that's a little bit of a different scenario than Derek and Alvin. I think he's in a really good place right now, and I think he's going into the offseason in a really good place. So I don't think getting him out there on the field for this last game in his situation would have been in the best interest of anybody, him most importantly. So I think he goes into this offseason with some comfort, knowing that he got cleared medically. He goes in with some comfort that he was able to get out there for the last few weeks in practice. So he kind of goes out there with a great foundation. Listen, he was doing a really nice job. He was having a really nice season for us until he got sidelined. And so I think he just kind of wants to pick up where he left off. But he was certainly disappointed by like everybody else, by the way the circumstances were. But he also has been extremely supportive of me, and I know he's really, really encouraged, and he's really looking forward to the future here.
It sounds like you're going to have to compartmentalize in the sense that as the current head coach, you have to evaluate everybody else, and that shortly thereafter, then you're going to be a candidate for the permanent job. Is that kind of the way you envision the next few weeks going?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to Jeff's question. I mean, along the way here, the last 9 weeks, I've made notes and things, and obviously in preparing for the formal head coach interview. So there's things that I have that I'm going to go into the interview with. But now when the season's over, we take a step back, and really, this is every year we do the same thing. We go and evaluate everything and everybody. The difference for me is going to be obviously the actual decision going in, and hey, this would be my decision on this area. This would be my decision on this, whether it's players, coaches, or whatever. That would be the biggest difference for me in the interview process. But along the way, certainly formulating opinions and ideas.
And presumably some of the other candidates will be assistants on current teams. Do you have any sense of, did Mickey give you any sense of what the timetable might be?
Well, the NFL has their own timetable, so there's only so much you can do with the in-person interviews and things like that before the divisional round and the wild card round, and the teams are on bye weeks, and that's like the process for that's getting about as thick as the rule book itself. So I don't think that there's going to be anything imminent. I think there has to be a process that has to play out with the number of candidates, and all that. So I don't think there's going to. I think it'll be a few week process, probably to say the least. And so we'll see how that plays out. But I know my interview will probably take place some point later next week.
I know you didn't have much info last night, but how's Foster doing today?
Yeah, he has a knee injury. They got some scans back. They're trying to figure out if it's surgical or not. Obviously hoping for the best there in his situation. So the last I saw him at the team meeting this morning, they were still waiting on some final. Got the MRIs and the scans and bone scans and all that kind of stuff. They were waiting on some final numbers or results rather, to see what was going to happen there. But hopefully he avoided anything major, and it's unfortunate. Last game of the year at the end of the game like that, but so we're kind of hoping for the best.
You expect some of your staff to be interviewing for other jobs too? Promotional jobs in particular around the league?
Yeah, listen, it's that time of year, right? So everyone's going to, is going to be, the requests start coming in and all that. So Mickey met with our coaching staff this morning to kind of explain that process. Like I said, everybody here is still employed, and we'll just kind of handle that on a case-by-case basis. But, I've never been a part of a situation where, guys aren't interviewing every year. So that's kind of a...
Would you guys allow them to interview for lateral moves if it comes to that, if not knowing?
Yeah, I that'll really be on a case-by-case basis, depending on who it is, where it is, what the position is, and who the person is, based on, the evaluation. So it'll really be a case-by-case. That's kind of what Mickey communicated to the staff this morning.
What would be kind of your read on Clint and how things have gone with that offense? And obviously only 1 year, it's tough to kind of...
Well, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if any coach on the staff was more affected by the circumstances than Clint, right? So you look, talk about a roller coaster. We come out of the gate, first 2 games have 40-plus points. We got all the pieces in place and things are rolling, right? Then we have the injury. Then Eric McCoy went down, and then the injury bug started hitting us. And so, I mentioned the quarterback thing earlier. We've played started 3 different quarterbacks this season. So that's a challenge for any coordinator, much less a guy, that's in his first year here with a new team. And so, listen, I think that Clint did a lot of great things with the hand that got dealt. I think he never complained. Just who's up this week, who do we got, whether it's the offensive line injuries or the receiver injuries or the quarterback. We kind of hit us at every position. And, I thought he made, he did a lot of good things with what he had in place. He would be the first guy to tell you that he'd love to be more consistent. There were some areas like I think yesterday's game is a great example. Our first half, I think we scored on every drive, did we not? I think we had double-digit number of plays on the first 4 drives, and then we come out in the second half and we can't duplicate it. So he'd be the first guy to tell you that the consistency thing has got to be the thing that improves the most. But all in all, again, that's going to be one of those things where. It's like the question earlier, you start look at the cut-ups from the year, and there's going to be some things that come out like, all right, we did some really good things here when we had, the pieces in place. So whether that was Alve, and whether that was Taysom, whether that was Rashid or Alave, along the way, the offensive line. And so, again, he had a lot of musical chairs going on there. And so I think he did a pretty good job with the pieces that, each week with what he had.
Slightly different off-season topic, if you don't mind, but the kickoff rule.
Yeah.
What do you expect the conversation to be like around it?
Well, listen, I think it was and I'm not just saying this because I was directly involved, but I don't think you can look at it and say it wasn't a major success. I saw some of the final numbers for the regular season today. I mean, essentially last year we were dealing with there was a return on 1 out of every 5 kicks. We've increased that to 1 out of every 3 kicks. So that's a pretty big, significant jump for 1 year. I think there were 7 kickoff return touchdowns this year. I don't have the big number will be the injury numbers that come out, but for every indication, we brought the injury rate way down to kind of where the offensive defensive injury rates are. I can't say that, for sure yet until I have them on paper. But overall, returns are up, injuries are down, play became more exciting. And I think I said this to you guys about halfway through the year, is that no one's talking about it. It's another one of those, if no one's talking about it, it's probably doing pretty well. And so it's become relevant again. I think we've made the play relevant. Now, do I think there's some modifications we can make? I think there'll be some discussions this year on do we move the touchback to the 35-yard line? Do we move the kicker to the 30-yard line? Do we change the setup zone for the kickoff return players to add more variety to what the kickoff return teams can do? Those are the ones that jump out at me. The onside kick will always come up again. This year, league-wide, onside kicks were 3 for 50, so a solid 6%. So that conversation's always gonna creep up again. So and there are a couple things we can do with the onside kick as well. So those special teams conversations will come up. But if you handed me these numbers in the beginning of the year on the kickoff and told me this is what they're going to be, I think everybody would say that it's been a major success. So very, very pleased with how year one went with the kickoff. I definitely think there's some things we can get better at. The overall drive start, I think, was just below 30 yards on all kickoffs, and on returns it was the 28.8 yard line. And so, I think that, like I said, I think there's some small things we can adjust to make it play even more exciting, even more returns. But to go from 1 of 5 to 1 of 3 is significant in 1 year. So I was very, very happy with that.
Chris, I gotta ask, how pissed off are you guys as a team on Mike Evans got the record at the very end of it? The fans want to know.
Fans want to know, not you, the fans.
That's the big topic.
The fans want to know.
I got a bunch of tweets saying, you gotta ask them about that. So
all right, that's fair.
I gotta do my duty here.
No, it's very fair. The truth is, we called the defense to double cover him, and he didn't get double covered. So I know the fans want us to put 5 guys on him. I got it. And in fairness, since you asked, I was just about to call timeout because I saw that we weren't double covering him, and I didn't get the timeout fast enough. So that's the reality. Hey, I just want to say before we leave, I just want to thank you guys. I think you guys have been awesome to me, and I really appreciate your guys' hustle, grind, and how hard you guys work at it. I'm a guy of passion. I see how passionate you guys do this every day, and I appreciate it. I don't have to agree with everything you say or write or tweet or X, Y, Z, whatever it's called. But no, I really do appreciate your hard work and your dedication. So thanks. Appreciate it, guys. All right.